Hey, it's Jamal at Cooper Road Mini with a different kind of project, you know, and I notice there's not many of these on YouTube. This is my friend's Volvo XC-70, and we're going to put a receiver hitch on it. Here we go. There's 4 screws here on each side of the car. They're all the same, so they're easy to keep track of. There are 2 little bump stops that look like that unscrew all of these. Use a Torx T25 driver. And there are plastic nuts that retain the backside of the bumper right there. Now there might be a backup sensor I'm not aware of, but let's see what happens. Okay, we got a kid yelling. We're going to study it for a second and come back and take it off. We tend not to want to break things. So it turned out the instructions here as they are provided. Again, these have to work with a number of models over years. They're going to be kind of vague. You know, they said to remove all the things we did, and it turned out it really does have just a very strong grip. A few gentle tools here that I used to get into the area here. Again, gently. This turned out to have a very good angle. I could see that it was popping away. And here's where the fasteners are. Now that one side's loose. You have these little tabs that just pop into these grooves. You get one here, and down the side. So it actually wants to be lifted up a bit and pried out, but once you overcome those little tabs, it does just yank away. And showing where these are helps you decide where you want to put the load on pulling the other side. This is a slightly different looking loop right here. But that rear fascia has now been pulled away. The towing eye is under here, but you don't need to get to it until after this is removed. Again, that was a little bit vague in the instructions. So let me wobble this side loose here. I'll remove it and we'll show what's behind it. All right. We got our guest cameraman here, Xavier Cooper, doing a great job. We showed how those tabs on the other side wanted to come off here. So basically, we're just going to try to grab the piece that's coming off. You've got the other side loose. We'll do the same over here and undo all of these tabs. 1, 2. Nope, that tail light was cracked. We saw that. And this should just, you know. There we go. No backup sensor. But these are usually lightweight. Not attached that hard. It came off pretty nicely. And now we can take a look at the bits and pieces under here as we go about installing the rest of the hitch.
Turned off,
we noticed
Jamal.
the tail light. The tail light had a crack in it. You can see a lot of dirt. Our friend lives on about 1.5 miles of gravel dirt road to get up to her property. Tough old Volvo. Well, what is it? Maybe a 2012 or so. All right, me and my little helper have decided to shift the car over here into the shade closer to our shop. And in the meantime, we took the hose to it because a good portion of the gravel road was being carried about on the framework under here, what they call the impact bar. So basically what we did, and I probably skipped that step, but it was kind of dirty and it wasn't. The instructions really weren't very clear about this tow hook piece. It turned out they meant to remove this panel inside the car, this appearance panel. That wasn't too clear in the photo or anything else. I'm looking around under here, there was no access to it. Luckily, our impact bar, I just managed to wobble it out by having all of it loose. It snuck out between this installed hook. But then there's a bolt inside here that you had to get to under there, and it was probably further complicated by this is my veterinarian's car, and boy is it full of stuff, and it's pretty hard to see that there was a panel that you could take out under here. But anyway, that's all sorted out. We scraped off the rest of any gravel bits so we have a nice flat edge. The idea with the instructions is to sort of sandwich this mount. You know, they provide you this whole thing. Let's see if I can position it with one hand. It just lines up right over the existing mounting for the bar. So really pretty straightforward. Now it's heavy and awkward considering you have to sandwich this mount starting those bolts and then somehow, we haven't found out yet exactly how, sneak this in before bolting down what's called the impact bar around the hitch. All right. So we're going to see, I'm going to see if my little assistant here can start the bolt holes as I line it up. I'm not sure I have any way of doing the camera at the same time, but we'll try to show how that goes together.
Which way do I turn it? This
Righty-tighty, yeah. Same the way the wrench is going. As I've already set it to where it only turns the way it wants to turn.
that way?
Yep. Just like that. And then it goes back the other way. Yep, and then crank. There we go. Excellent, excellent. Zaven's not even 5 yet. Look at him helping me install the hitch. Nice, nice. So see, once it's installed, really the only part you see is this piece hanging out, of course, and this is like the little safety feature, such as it is. And then we'll simply trim the fascia as needed as we reinstall the rear once we've tightened all these up and hit the torque specification. We'll put the little appearance panel back over once we've tightened the inside of this towing eye right there, that bolt right there behind it. We've elected to go ahead and use the hardware provided with the hitch, even though they say these blocks, these big spacers here, are in the event that what they call the rear panel has raised edges. Now the way this sheet metal is stamped, there are no raised edges, so there's no need for those spacers. If you had to line up spacers on here as well as sandwich that hitch between all of this, you'd probably need a couple of good jack stands or maybe a helper or two beyond 4 years old to achieve lining all of those bits up. As it is, these are a little bit on the short side. You know, I like to have a full thread engagement, at least equivalent to the thickness of the fastener. So in this case, it's a 10mm 3/8-ish thread. I want really good thread engagement, and you can see that even the way it was before adding the sandwiched hitch, there's really not a lot of engagement there. So the instructions say don't use these. I did some careful measuring, and with the thick washers provided and the thickness of the hitch, you do want to use these in this particular case. Of course, I showed the part there with my little boy helping install these bolts, but in all seriousness, this is a pretty major safety item. We have sitting here the torque wrench, 38 foot-pounds. As I mentioned, I used these big beefy fasteners, 10.9 grade metric. Take a 17mm socket. I verified the depth was good and got the bolt on the back side of it all lined up. Careful here, because this can go on upside down and you'll be fighting yourself trying to find the threads here, but it can go one way or the other. It appears more centered in the hole and lines up with the hole when it's properly oriented. If you're fighting it, try flipping it over. They talk about trimming. I'll show the trim here in a moment. It ended up being very minor on this one. What I did is I just cut a little flap right here. Basically in this flat black piece, I just made 2 cuts to allow this piece here to slide on. This little flap will just fold back against it and rest against the down bar here of the hitch. But installing this side here, I just basically set the thing on here, and then just a matter of kind of working this in to each of the tabs as we showed. I've kind of pushed that one into place so that it holds there. And you can see here how all of these little tabs line up to corresponding slots. So let's see if I can lift it up here gently and find all those little tab locations. Sometimes you want to lift it up a bit just to get above it, and you can see how when you get them all positioned gently, this is where you really need 2 hands or an assistant, but basically they all line up right here on the top. Slip this in to the little groove here, and everything lines up, pops back into place, and then there's the bump stop for the tailgate that holds this corner, and a couple of things on the underside. One quick follow-up, everything back on. Yeah, we had a cracked tail light that had filled with dust from the gravel road, but this all went back on just the way it should. All the little things popped into place, all the little screws went back on normally, and under here you can barely see just the bottom of the receiver, and you've got to look very carefully to even see the bit that was trimmed.